All right, I'll just hand to our host, Premier Mo.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, and thank you to Minister Freeland, Minister LeBlanc, and Minister Hodgson for joining us here today in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And thank you to each of my colleagues, premiers from across Canada, who, as I say, collectively, we represent all Canadians as well, like the Prime Minister and the federal government does. We had a good meeting with discussions around how we can advance the opportunities for Canadians from coast to coast to coast, how we can work together to meet the aspirations and the statements of the Prime Minister with respect to becoming the strongest economy in the G7 nations and advancing Canada's opportunity to become a global energy superpower. Now, there's much discussion that happened today on what that path looks like, and there's much discussion, I think, in fairness, that is and work that is going to happen post today's meeting. But I would say it was a very positive meeting on behalf of all Canadians national and subnational, well, one Canadian national and 13 subnational leaders. And I would just close with, again, thanking my Premier colleagues for joining us here in Saskatoon today, and thank Prime Minister Carney for having the First Ministers meeting in Saskatoon today.
Great. Thank you very much, Premier Mo. Thanks for your hospitality to the people of Saskatchewan, for welcoming the Premier's federal ministers, myself here, particularly as we spoke during the day, yesterday and before, at a very difficult time as fires rage across the northern prairies. The response is a massive undertaking. Credit to your government, that of Premier Canoe, Premier Smith, the volunteers, first responders, the support from the Canadian Forces and the Canadian government across the board. I also want to thank the premiers for their support, their consistent, unwavering, constructive support in our response to the unjustified and unlawful tariffs that the U.S. is still imposing on Canada. We are fighting to get the best deal for Canada. That work is ongoing. Minister LeBlanc will be headed to Washington this evening to continue negotiations. En même temps, nous travaillons également au développement de nouveaux partenariats commerciaux. Le Canada a ce que le monde veut et les valeurs auxquelles les autres aspirent. Notre objectif principal est clair, de bâtir une seule économie canadienne au lieu de 13 et d'abattre les barrières qui freinent le commerce interne et la mobilité de la main-d'œuvre. We're also focused on building nation-building projects, and that took up much of our discussion today. I outlined during the meetings the central contribution of the federal government to this mission, first and foremost to eliminate all remaining federal barriers to internal trade and labour mobility, and to enable the federal government, working with the provinces, the territories, Indigenous peoples, to identify and expedite nation-building projects. To be deemed in the national interest, those projects should, amongst others, strengthen the Canadian economy, strengthen our autonomy, our resilience and our security, provide undeniable benefits to Canada, have a high likelihood of successful execution, be a high priority for Indigenous leaders, and to drive Canada's clean growth potential. Under a new process, once a project is designated as being in the country's national interest, a new federal major project office will bring together all relevant federal departments to provide a single set of conditions that must be met for those projects to advance. And the commitment is to proceed with the approval process for a maximum of 2 years under a new streamlined process that prioritizes federal resources to these most important of projects. We will also work towards one project, one review, including through new cooperation agreements with the provinces. The point is to build the certainty, the stability, and the ambition that builders need to catalyze enormous investment to make Canada into an energy superpower and to build the strongest economy in the G7. We had wide-ranging discussions. There was a lot of preparation for this meeting. We discussed a wide range of potential nation-building projects, including, and this is far from exhaustive, the Western and Arctic Corridor, which, amongst other things, connects energy, critical minerals, and trade infrastructure, the Eastern Energy Partnership, critical minerals pathways, which include a range of critical mineral projects that premiers can speak to. The next stage of nuclear, from uranium to SMRs to large-scale nuclear, and a series of infrastructure investments for export diversification from ports to rails to last-mile roads. All First Ministers agreed that Indigenous partnerships and equity will be central to success. And upcoming federal legislation will mandate both meaningful consultation with Indigenous peoples, both during the process of determining which projects are in the national interest and developing the conditions for each project. The goal here is to get projects built faster so we can create more high-paying careers and greater prosperity for all Canadians. Avec notre nouvelle approche, nous allons mener à terme de grands projets et le faire à des vitesses que nous n'avons jamais vues auparavant. Nous allons relier nos provinces, nos territoires et nos communautés. Nous allons renforcer notre économie, créer de bonnes carrières et créer de la prospérité pour les Canadiens et les Canadiens. This meeting demonstrated how we can give ourselves far more than any foreign government can ever take away. So we're in a position where we can build big, build bold, build one Canadian economy, and build now. Thank you very much. Merci, and I will now pass to Premier Ford.
Well, thank you so much, Prime Minister, for bringing us together. It was a very productive meeting. I also want to thank Premier Moe for your hospitality. We had a great time over the last couple of days, a lot of discussions moving forward. So I also want to thank all the premiers. We have an incredible group of premiers. We are united. We're going to move this country forward, the likes of which this country's never seen before. And how we're going to do this is making sure that we don't have federal duplication. As the Prime Minister said, let's get it done quick, fast, immediate, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's not forget that President Trump has declared an economic war on every single business, every single person in this country. And we need to do everything we can to fight against him. Again, what the Prime Minister said, and I agree, an illegal trade war. And I think the President's going to have a rude awakening. We're going to unleash our strengths, and that's be it mining, the pipelines across the country, infrastructure, roads, bridges, highways, and specifically the road to the Ring of Fire. So we had that discussion, and as I mentioned earlier on, the last couple times I talked to the press that, you know, nothing's carved in stone at this meeting. There was great discussions because I know the first question is going to be, what are the exact projects? I have all the confidence in the world. The Prime Minister and his team are going to bring back the list. They're going to sit down. They're going to discuss it to build these large national infrastructure projects from coast to coast to coast. The other area that we spoke about was bail reform. It's absolutely critical we keep our communities safe. It's each and every one of our jobs to protect communities, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to make sure the real bad guys, these violent criminals, go to jail. And people may have a drug addiction, we're going to support them. I'm not worried about them committing crimes as much as I am the criminals that are coming in from all over the country, all over the world, flying in and causing chaos in neighborhoods. And I'll speak just about Ontario on that issue there. But again, Prime Minister, I want to thank you. Working collaboratively and cooperating with all the premiers. I'm very, very confident. I want to tell the people of Canada, and in my case, the people of Ontario, there's hope. We're going to look at how we're going to move forward and implement as quickly as possible prosperity in our province and across the country. Again, I want to thank you, and I'll pass it back to you, Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Premier. And I guess we'll pass to the press for questions.
Thank you. We'll now begin the question period. We'll take 20 minutes of question, 20 minutes de question. Judy Trin, first question. Judy Trin, CTV News. Prime Minister, other than the premiers of BC and Quebec, there seems to be growing consensus in support of pipelines carrying bitumen east, west, probably north as well. Is the federal government at this point considering pipelines a project of national significance, and will you be sidestepping certain environmental requirements outlined in Bill C-69 to fast-track such a project?
Well, the first thing to say is, and let me be a bit more specific, if I could, because and I will defer to the premiers to add, but the Western premiers and the premiers of the territories met and supported an approach, the Western corridor, the Western and Arctic corridor, effectively a corridor between port to port to port, from Pacific Northwest to James Bay to Grays Bay Point, and within that are opportunities in energy, critical minerals, and well beyond, and specifically within energy, opportunities, yes, for an oil pipeline to get to Tidewater. Now, within the broader context of national interest, the interest is in, as mentioned in the press release, decarbonized barrels. So working alongside forms of decarbonization for those barrels. That is absolutely in our interest. It provides diversification of trade partners. It provides the development of new industries. It provides economic activity across the west and into the north. So yes, there's real potential there. We took up a good deal of our time in discussions and potential to move forward on that. And if further developed, the federal government will look to advance it. En ce qui concerne, c'est plus que les oléoducs, il y a des initiatives qui concernent les corridors pour l'énergie, puis des minéraux critiques, par exemple le corridor de l'ouest et du nord. Mais, point final, oui, il y a des possibilités d'avoir des pipelines, des oléoducs pour le pétrole, y compris des initiatives de décarbonisation.
Premier Smith, perhaps you'd like to respond. If I'm understanding correctly, Prime Minister, you are saying that you would fast-track a project involving decarbonized oil through pipelines, decarbonized energy. And is that something that, Premier Smith, that you agree with, or do you feel that we need to get the bitumen out of the ground now as is, as soon as possible?
Well, let's call it the grand bargain, that we know that there is a group of oil sands companies that have been advocating for some time for what they call the Pathways Project, that would decarbonize the production of their bitumen through the use of carbon capture, utilization, and storage, ultimately using hydroelectric or small modular nuclear to decarbonize, and then direct air capture for the last mile. I think the point I was making to the Prime Minister and my colleagues is that there's lots of ways to decarbonize, but the Pathways Project is an expensive project. It would cost anywhere from $10 to $20 billion to get built. And to make the economic case for that, having more egress with more barrels to be sold to Asia is the way to pay for it. If we had a 1 million barrel a day pipeline going to the Northwest BC coast, that would generate about $20 billion a year in revenues. And so that seems like a pretty good value proposition if both of those projects can proceed at once.
Next question, prochaine question.
Bonjour, M. Carney, Louis Blouin de Radio-Canada. Vous dites que vous voulez bâtir une nouvelle unité canadienne. Or, l'Assemblée des Premières Nations a émis un communiqué aujourd'hui pour dire que votre projet de loi pour accélérer les grands projets d'intérêt nationaux, que c'est une menace à leurs droits défendus par des traités. Ma question, pourquoi il n'y a pas de leaders autochtones ici aujourd'hui? Et comment vous allez faire pour rallier les leaders des communautés autochtones qui pourraient être touchés par ces projets-là?
Je veux commencer. J'ai eu des réunions avec le chef de l'Assemblée nationale de peuples autochtones, puis les autres chefs de peuples autochtones, ou de l'Assemblée nationale des Premières Nations, pardon. Et on a des discussions. Il y aura un processus de consultation en ce qui concerne, oui, la législation, le projet de loi, Puis les projets, ça c'est plus important parce que chaque projet, c'est une question des projets, des questions d'une consultation sur chaque projet et les engagements des considérations qui concernent les projets. Il y a 3 aspects de consultation. Il y aura une réunion. Nous avons eu un accord, moi et le grand chef Woodhouse. Il y aura une réunion au mi-juillet à Winnipeg sur tous les sujets en ce qui concerne cela.
Monsieur Legault, j'aimerais savoir si vous avez l'impression que votre proposition de ligne électrique entre Québec et Terre-Neuve est considérée comme un projet d'intérêt national. Et sinon, c'est quoi vos options? C'est quoi votre planche de salut?
Oui, j'ai l'impression que c'est considéré comme un projet d'intérêt national. Donc, c'est important. On a signé une entente historique énorme avec Terre-Neuve pour rehausser la capacité de Churchill Falls, pour construire une nouvelle centrale, Gull Island, donc de transporter l'électricité. Là, on parle de 7200 mégawatts entre Terre-Neuve puis Québec. C'est un projet d'intérêt national.
Et je suis tout à fait d'accord avec Monsieur le Premier ministre.
Prochaine question. Next question.
Hi, Joanna Smith with The Logic. Prime Minister Carney, can you spell out with some detail how exactly projects will be chosen for the list and by when, and when will we know about them?
So, several things. First, there will be review. The projects, we discussed a number of projects today. They're in various stages of preparation. They're in various stages of preparation. I think there's a shared understanding based on our discussion of the main criteria for consideration. I listed them. They're in the communique. I'm not going to repeat them given interest of time. We will work with project proponents on assessing projects relative to those criteria. As those criteria are increasingly well understood, in the national interest, Indigenous participation, example, advancing clean energy, material benefits to Canadians. As those are increasingly well understood, building the resilience of Canada, strategic economy of Canada, autonomy of Canada, more projects will come forward. It's not like the gate doesn't come down all of a sudden. Projects will also fall by the wayside because they won't necessarily meet all this criteria. It's a living list. But what's being clear is what's being put in place, or what is being proposed, will be proposed in legislation, is the ability of the federal government to devote the right resources to these projects, to make quick decisions about those projects that respect our environmental responsibilities, other responsibilities, work with the provinces directly to move forward and to get the country building. That's what we're talking about. Moving the country forward, building the country. I think it says it somewhere behind me. That's what we're here for. That's what we're committed to. That's what the focus of the discussion was today.
Thank you. And on another topic, the communique says the federal government committed to working urgently to remove Chinese tariffs on Canadian agriculture and seafood products. What does that work involve? Is the Canadian government prepared to lift the 100% tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles?
The Canadian government is engaging with its Chinese counterparts, including at the ministerial level, and we'll continue those discussions. They are a top priority for us.
I would just add to that, that is precisely what this will take to not only secure our market access for products like canola oil and canola meal in the long term, but to secure a more broad trading relationship with China. They are the largest they are the largest populated country in the world, and likely one of the largest economies in the world as well. The fact that the federal government is working diligently not only to have those tariffs removed, but working diligently to broaden that relationship into the future, I think is precisely what we need to do as a nation.
That's a major priority for Manitoba as well, and I think it speaks to the fact that we're trying to solve this complex multivariable equation. We have the Trump administration on one side, and then we have an ascendant People's Republic of China on the other side. A nation of our size, which has great people, abundant natural resources, the element to be able to solve that equation that confronts us is unity. It's being able to work together. And so I think that this meeting here today of the First Ministers representing Canadians from different walks of life is an important step forward for us being able to have that showdown with China, have that showdown with the Trump administration, and make sure that you and your jobs come out on top. Oui, certainement. Cet défi avec la Chine, puis avec M. Trump, c'est un très grand défi pour le Manitoba et puis tout le Canada. Alors, en tant qu'un pays avec un peuple merveilleux, avec beaucoup de ressources naturelles, les choses qu'on doit se souvenir pour diriger contre ces défis, c'est un rassemblement, une unité nationale. Et cette rencontre aujourd'hui était une étape très importante pour avancer ce projet.
Next question.
Stephanie Taylor, The National Post. Prime Minister, why are you not prepared today to announce or name any specific project that you've heard from premiers that would be fast-tracked under this new approvals process?
Look, well, the first thing, Stephanie, I can give you, if I may, lots of examples of those projects, which range from Grays Bay Port and Road, Churchill Port, the Pathways Alliance, Northwest Coast Oil Pipeline, Intertie Bay Nord, Ring of Fire, La Fosse du Labrador, Contrecoeur Terminal, and on. Now I've offended some of my members because we don't have enough time for me to go through all the projects. There is a long list of projects that bring the country together, diversify our markets, make us more resilient, create good jobs and growth, have very good prospects of Indigenous partnerships and beyond. Okay, so they're there. The purpose of the meeting today was to catalyze bringing projects up, getting a shared understanding of what would constitute a project of national interest, explaining the new federal approach to this, building consensus and unity, as Premier Canoe just said, and this, if I may, this is a unified group. This is a group that wants to work together and will work together to build our country. And now we move quickly from this position. The job of the federal government, our first job, is legislation. Legislation to give ourselves the ability to make this a reality. But we will very quickly move into the summer to refine that list from the list we have. I think as more private proponents become aware of the opportunity here, we're going to see more projects coming forward.
Well, let me tell you, I'm going to be very blunt here. This has been the best meeting we've had in 10 years. Simple. Best meeting I've had in 7 years. And there was no expectations that the Prime Minister was going to come out and say, you get that project, you get that project. It was a great discussion. Now, we were all talking. Now it's time to put it into action. All of us are responsible. But I thought it was an incredible meeting, great communication, great collaboration, and we all walked out of that room united. And that's the most important thing. Now the Prime Minister is going to go to work, get the legislation passed, and we'll divvy it up. I described him today as Santa Claus. He's coming, and his sled was full of all sorts of stuff. Now he's taking off back to the North Pole. He's going to sort it out, and then he's going to call us. So, and we're building a short of Santa Claus is my big belly. I got to loan it to him.
Well,
and we're building a port at the North Pole, I think.
That's right, absolutely, and critical minerals up in the North Pole.
And if I could build on the example that Doug gave, I think one of the critical pieces here is the unity. So while on Christmas morning at my house, my kids are pretty excited and not fighting each other over their toys, New Brunswick is really excited to see the Eastern Energy Partnership as a priority project, and we are in full support of our colleagues in the West advancing the Western and Arctic Corridor, and we're not going to be in competition with each other because we're in support of every province here advancing their interests in a way that we're all aware of, that we're all supportive of, and that demonstrates to Canadian the unity among Canadian premiers, the strength around this table, that we're all on the same page to build an economy that serves every Canadian from each of our positions in each of our provinces.
Sorry, I want to just thank the Prime Minister on behalf of Northern Premiers. It's been a long time at the table asking for a focus on Arctic security. And being able to walk in here, we've always had the support of all our colleagues. Doug, as the chair of COF, has always been right behind us, Premier Ford. But being here today and actually seeing action put to that, and also for the nation-building projects in all three territories, having that opportunity to have support behind them and understanding that they are a key point within our strategy for Arctic security. I just want to say thank you, and what a refreshing opportunity to be at a meeting like this today.
There are differences of opinion around the table as to whether an oil pipeline should be a candidate to be fast-tracked without a proponent pitching one. Prime Minister, can you clarify, is the federal government prepared to say it's willing to fast-track an oil pipeline without a private sector proponent saying it wants to build one?
Well, look, it's not a decision. It's not a decision we have to make today. I think what's clear, be absolutely clear. We're saying, and this is consistent. This is consistent with the agreement we had as First Ministers back in March when we met in Ottawa, when we talked about energy and trade corridors. It had a little less focus because we hadn't translated that into a legislative initiative and more specifics about projects. There is an ability to build that energy infrastructure, that oil pipeline. I'm going to refer to my earlier answer and to Premier Smith's answer moments ago about a grand bargain, decarbonizing the barrels, various ways to do that. I agree with her, and so the opportunity is there. The market is there in Asia. It is within, last point, it is within a bigger framework that the Western premiers and the territorial premiers have come up with, which is the Western Arctic Corridor. So it's much more than that. And sometimes the discussion is reduced far too much to one type of project. It's important, but the range of what we're discussing is much, much bigger than that. And if I can just finish with this is the point for the country. Our ambitions must be bigger and broader, and what we heard today, what we discussed today, was entirely consistent with that. Big, broad ambitions consistent with having the strongest economy in the G7 and being an energy superpower. Thank you.
We'll have time.
And what I heard from the Prime Minister is that, I mean, it's up to us to find the proponent, I think. I think if there's some certainty that a process is going to be successful in a reasonable period of time, a 2-year window, I think that there will be a proponent that will step forward. My view would be that we'll have failed at the assignment if government has to build another pipeline. That will demonstrate to us that we didn't create the conditions for private investment to come to the table. So I'm encouraged that the Prime Minister is prepared to do a 2-track process. Let's identify a project and a window and work towards identifying the ways, some of the barriers that have been in the way of the current regulatory process, at the same time as working on fixing the regulatory process so that it makes future projects easier to approve. I think the reason we have to have a fast track is because we know that there are barriers. And so if we can kickstart it and have a dual track, I think that we may be able to achieve the outcome. We'll know in a couple of months' time, hopefully, whether this new approach is going to work, but I think it's worth giving it a try.
And all of that is true, there are very much indirect benefits because, as the Prime Minister said, the corridor, port to port, and then maybe to an Arctic port, a Grays Bay corridor, is significant for so many other projects. It would go in the vicinity of 2 hydroelectric facilities and allow us to actually start to advance additional power into industries that are creating wealth and creating jobs in northern parts of our provinces. We have, potash mines that are expanding and doubling production. The largest potash mine in the world is being constructed in our province as we speak. We are going to need more rail capacity for other products, agri-food products, which are the most sustainable in the world. Our potash, which we are going to produce more of and need to get it out to countries around the world through a Pacific port or an Atlantic port. And so as we move through this discussion, the opportunities around enhancing ports like Kitimat and Prince Rupert are, tremendously valuable, not just for the discussion around energy products and oil specifically, but much beyond that to hydroelectric power, empowering the industries that are creating wealth, additional port capacity for products that we may produce in Saskatchewan, but many other provinces as well. And so this is I would say, a generational opportunity. for us to achieve some of the aspirations the Prime Minister has put forward, but a generational opportunity for Canadians as well. And I really look forward to where these discussions go over the course of the next number of months.
Can I just jump in? Sorry, PJ, just to interrupt. I just want to put a fine point on what my colleagues have said here. It's a generational opportunity for Canadians, but it's also a generational opportunity for some of the poorest communities in our country. And if we have a window of opportunity to build up Canada, and we can get more kids tied into an education, to a pathway to trades, to college, to university, if we can put the road and transmission and pipe infrastructure to build out those opportunities, this country is not just going to be better off in terms of the GDP growth. We're going to be better off in terms of making sure that every Canadian kid can reach their full potential in this great country.
Yeah, I was just going to add as well that what an incredible moment that we're in. You look across this beautiful and very strong country of Canada, and that nation building had happened all the way from the East Coast right to the West Coast, and that hasn't quite met up to the North as well. So I'm very thankful for the incredible leadership of Prime Minister Carney, who really recognizes that there's incredible opportunities and that we actually have solutions to bring when we're looking at different corridors, access to critical minerals, access to create markets, whether it's to Asia or Europe, and to assert our sovereignty. You look to the north, and the infrastructure gap between north and south is something that I think we're all taking note, and that this is our moment. As a country, we're unified around wanting to see us prosper and to become stronger to come out of it, and very much look forward to seeing actual infrastructure built to ensure that our communities are healthy, and that's how you best assert your sovereignty, is by how healthy your communities are.
We'll have time for one last question. Dernière question.
Phil Tank, Saskatoon Star Phoenix. I wanted to ask Premiers Moe and Smith whether they share Premier Ford's enthusiasm about this new, what seems to be like a new relationship with the federal government.
I can go, and yes, I think we do have an opportunity here. And as I spoke to some of the, the generational opportunities that I think not just in the corridor that I spoke to specifically, but the conversation around really aspiring to a greater economic future than maybe what we've had in the last number of years. And Phil, we've been very much a growth-focused government here within the province of Saskatchewan. And I see some of that growth, a balanced focus on that growth nationally. And we applaud that. And as you know, the last number of weeks and months, I think it's fair to say that we as a government are putting forward our best foot to give every opportunity to work alongside the federal government, look to work alongside other provinces and other Canadians in order for us to achieve that. Because we support, in this province, we support the aspiration to grow our economy to lead the G7. And we want to be part of that, and we believe we can be a big part of that in Saskatchewan. We support the aspiration for Canada to become a global energy superpower. And that means we are going to have discussions, some of them, not all of them easy, but have the discussions about advancing all of the energy products that we have and all the natural resources essentially that we have in a sustainable way and in an inclusive way. We've always supported that, and we continue to support that today. And so I would say, in the meetings that I've had, whether they be First Ministers meetings, Council of Federation meetings over the last 7.5 years, that today was a very positive meeting, and I hope that Canadians would feel very positive with their provincial, territorial, and federal leaders coming out of here today in agreement on that.
I would say I'm encouraged by the immediate change of tone that we've seen from recent months. I think that there's, when we hear the Prime Minister talking about being an energy superpower, we haven't heard that kind of language for some time on both conventional and clean power. And I think that the fact that we've quantified that we've got 1.8 trillion barrels of oil, bitumen, and about 165 billion barrels is recoverable at today's technology, even at $60 oil, that's a $9 trillion asset. And you simply wouldn't have a policy of leaving a $9 trillion asset in the ground when it can stand to benefit everyone. You have to address issues, of course, of Indigenous ownership and equity partnership. You have to address issues, of course, of emissions and other environmental issues. But that's what I heard, is how do we have an all of the above approach? And I think that's very encouraging. So we're willing to work with the federal government on addressing some of the issues that are going to stand in the way of creating the environment for private investment. It doesn't help you to build a pipeline to the West Coast if there's a tanker ban. It becomes difficult to expand your natural gas market if you've got net zero power regs that are requiring it to be phased out by 2035. And you can't expand production if you have an emissions cap. So those are future conversations to be had about how we create that environment. But I think what I heard was that the Prime Minister wants to work on a dual track to be able to find some compromises on all of those, and I'm encouraged by that.
I noticed there's language about net zero electricity generation by 2050. Is that a mandate? Does that mean that the federal government is going to say you have to reach net zero by 2050, or it doesn't say that specifically, but I'm just curious whether there's consensus on that. Well, I know there's premiers that don't agree with that.
Well, we have policy in Alberta that has set a target of being carbon neutral by 2050. My grievance with the previous Prime Minister is that he was trying to advance that to 2030 and 2035, which was unachievable. So if we can work towards a 2050 target, do know that the power producers in my province are looking at that as a potentially achievable target. When you look at carbon capture, utilization and storage, the opportunity for nuclear, both conventional as well as small scale, and the conversation that we're now having about interties, that we might be able to bring in hydroelectric power. So 2050 has been a target that our province has set out.
Yeah, there's a number of aspects at play here with respect to how much power are we going to need in the next couple of decades in each of our respective jurisdictions, where that power is going to come from. We're having a very active conversation in finding our way through the nuclear regulatory process here in Saskatchewan. As we look ahead over the next 10, 15, and 20 years, we've talked actively about aspiring and targeting a 2050 net zero timeline, but we're also focused on the affordability and reliability of power that we're providing to not only industries but to families and people that live here in Saskatchewan. And so there's much is part of that conversation as we move forward. You're hearing the energy dominance conversation south of the border. Those are focused on powering powering data centers, essentially, moving forward. So Canada is going to be part of that increase in electricity demand, that increase in energy demand, and that's why I'm encouraged by the conversations that we're all able to have here today with respect to becoming that global energy superpower, but doing so by looking at all of the energy sources that we have, and that's what we're doing in Saskatchewan as well, but always with a mind of being environmentally sustainable and a lower carbon footprint in the future than what you have today.
This is a generational opportunity. I can't remember that everyone sitting around the table with a willing partner from the federal government, willing partners from 13 premiers. And do you know who the biggest willing partner is right now? Are the people of Canada. They want to move. And do you know who's responsible for doing that? Is President Trump. When our country comes under attack from President Trump, we unite. And we're a resilient country. And everyone realizes that if we don't move, we'll be left behind. And the consequences will be 10 times worse if we just sit back and do absolutely nothing. I describe Canada, and excuse the pun, as a big, huge gold mine. Now we have to start mining the gold, getting it out there. And no matter if it's the energy corridors being, as you've heard many of us say, being an energy superpower around the world, be it oil and gas, or be it nuclear energy and small modular reactors that we're leading the G7. That's what we need to do. We need to unleash. And as Premier Smith said, we have to create the environment and the conditions for companies to come here and invest. If we continue putting red tape and regulations and high taxes, guess what? No one's going to come and invest. But we're all confident, and I'm confident with the leadership of the Prime Minister, that he's creating that environment and conditions for people to come here and companies to come here and invest. And tell the world Canada is open for business. I'll leave you with this. United we stand, divided we fall. And I can tell you, we're a united group. I'll pass it over to you, Prime Minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Premier. Thank you all, to all the premiers and your teams for all the effort. You know, sometimes you don't know what you have until you've lost it. We're fortunate. We haven't lost anything. We were threatened, and the Canadian people stood up to the Americans. We know what we have, and now we're going to build on it. Taking matters absolutely in our control. We're united. We're going to build together, and we're going to build for all. We're going to build for all Canadians. That's what came out of this meeting. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Can I
This
say
puts
one
an
more
end to
thing
our
on the wildfires before we conclude? And as somebody whose rhetorical flourishes is often undermined in public, I do apologize, Mr. Prime Minister, because that was a great landing you just stuck there. On the wildfire situation in Manitoba, over the past few days, we have seen heroism. We have seen Canadian military flying evacuees through near zero visibility to safety. We've seen law enforcement, first responders, and firefighters staying back to protect entire communities. We've seen volunteers from across the country step up to help. And we've seen evacuees be very, very patient, waiting days to find their way to shelter, transported overnight, and then having to wait even beyond that to get to a hotel room. And so I want to say thank you. And it's in these moments of emergency and in these moments of crisis where you see the true nature of Canadians shine through. And I think that we need to be proud of that and to take a moment to thank folks for stepping up in the way that they have through our state of emergency, through the province of Saskatchewan state of emergency, and others. And hopefully today on the economic level, in the aftermath of the economic crisis that has been presented to us by Mr. Trump, hopefully Canadians have seen your leaders stepping up to work together, and that we see that same spirit of cooperation shining through. Miigwech, merci. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This puts an end to our press conference. C'est ce qui m'a fait à notre conférence de presse. Merci.